Hello, everyone. Welcome to Y.E.A.S.T, your energetic, authentic self today. I'm your host, Hope.
This is Joy.
And this is Sheila.
Hello, Joy and Sheila. Today, we're going to talk about a very exciting topic, limiting beliefs. Sheila?
Yay.
Yes, we are.
Put you onto the spot.
Talk about this. You know, as I think as coaches, this is something we've been exposed to, and we all can have our limiting beliefs. And, you know, I like to share one of mine where it was something in talking with a colleague not too long ago, we realized that we had something similar. And for me, it was being raised in a single parent household, and my mother instilling in me and my sister, I'll call it the necessity to, go on, educate ourselves, but ultimately take care of ourselves so we would not have to be dependent on anyone, particularly dependent on men, and how that has played out into adulthood for me, and how that limiting belief has influenced decisions that I've made, particularly as it relates to personal relationships. So what that has looked like for me, and I'll say early on because it's, we're all a work in process. So what that has looked like for me is how I approach relationships, being that seemingly independent woman. And, it goes to kind of a security and, once again, not wanting to be dependent. So, I am married. So early on in my relationship with my husband, I'll say, liked the idea that as we were dating, I wanted to pay for anything. It was right down the middle. So if we did dinner, I was paying half, he was paying half, because in my head, I had my mother's voice of, don't let a man pay for things. Don't be dependent on a man. Obviously we got past that, but frankly, even being with him for close to 11 years, being married for 5, there's still that tendency of, I'll call it a safety security thing of opening up and allowing him to take care of me, which is that's something that was part of the limiting belief that, once again, mom saying, make sure you are educated, successful, so that you will never have to be dependent on a man. So that's my limiting belief, or at least one of them.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, you mentioned one of them. So I'm sure later on we're going to talk about others. But I think what I heard is not something atypical, because I felt that when I was a child, my parents would tell me similar thing, that to be independent. I would like to know a little more, as you mentioned, because of this limiting belief, and it was impacting your relationship. How did that feel to you?
Great question. Actually, for me, I'm not sure I can truly for me, it was just something I knew, right? It's something I went with. And, for the most part, I guess I would say it felt pretty good, because if, relationships ended, it wasn't something where, and I shouldn't say if, when relationships ended, it wasn't something where I would say felt devastated. I would say I was sad, but it wasn't something where I was left going, oh my gosh, what will I do with the rest of my life? How will I survive financially? Because I had that independence, even being a young single parent myself, and working hard, taking care of my children, owning my own house, all of that, having a steady job. It wasn't something where I experienced worry as it related to relationships ending. The worries that I may have had were totally independent of that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You're a very independent and a powerful woman, and you don't need anyone else to complete you. right?
Well put. Now, if you were to talk to any of the men that I had relationships with and ask them how they felt, they might tell you different. They might
Okay.
describe me as being a strong-willed, determined, stubborn, whatever else type of woman. But yeah, that's
I don't see any
on
of
me.
that.
I'll say that's on them for labeling me, and some of those labels I might wear and wear them with pride.
So Shayla, because you mentioned this is the limiting belief, and I would like to know a little more about how this limiting belief impacted you or influenced you, quote, quote, negatively in your life.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Yeah, so because you mentioned this belief of you are independent, you are strong enough, and you are powerful, you don't need another person, especially a man, to support you. How did this limiting belief impacted you or influenced you, quote, quote, negatively?
First of all, I would say I'm not the one that labeled myself as powerful. You did that for me, so I appreciate it. I'll still own it. Negatively, I would say perhaps because of my, I'll label it as an attitude. Well, let's go back to labeling as a limiting belief and the independence associated with that, I can't predict the future, nor can I change the past, that more than likely I missed out on other relationships because I was that, I'll say, woman where, if a man approached me where I'm just like, no, I don't think so, that I would just kind of brush that person off. And oftentimes, even when my kids were younger, and I'll say if I was dating or in between relationships, and we might, I can recall one time being out, I love to fish. So I was taking my children fishing and had on my fishing garb. And the spot that we were at, there was a man that approached me, and he's just being friendly, and I was just kind of like, not today, don't have time, whatever. Kind of looked him up and down and moved on. And I remember my kids, just one of my kids looking at me and saying, "Well, wow, Mom, that was mean." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I said hi to him." He's like, and they said, "Well, I think he was just trying to talk and be friendly." I was like, I don't have time for that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, with that, it was just, once again, the teachings from my mom that may have created these limiting beliefs, or at least this one kind of led me to, perhaps judging whether any individual would be, I'll say, up to my standards if I wanted to enter into a relationship with them, where my expectation would be that they are, I'll say, independent, well-established, if you will. They didn't have to be rich by any means, but at least working to the point that I would not have to take care of them, because that was another expectation, if you will, with my mom and raising me, and particularly my sister, my brother's different expectations, but that I would not ever have to support, in essence, take care of a man. So I say that to say, yeah, I would quickly look, evaluate, judge, if you will, whether someone would meet that standard, and or if I could take them home to mom.
Right. So I'm going to ask one more question, Joy, and then I'm going to let you to ask more questions to Sheila. The question I have is, you mentioned that even today, after being married for 5 years, you seem to still struggle a little bit of letting your husband take care of you. And how would you take this realization of it's a limiting belief to go forward?
Great question. So what I've done with that, frankly, is communicated with my husband. So, at times, whether I'm probably primarily when I'm sick, or any, other times, I can't think of times when I'm like, no, you can't. But when he oftentimes will say, let me take care of you. You don't have to always be strong, be on. I'm here, let me take care of you. So, I open up and share and talk through that as to the why. So he's very aware, and he at times is applauded my mom, not to her face by any means, but when we were talking about it, it's like, kudos to your mom for instilling that in you. But then he's like, you have me, let's work together and, trust that he's there to support and take care of me. So we've had some pretty good conversations with that, where I'm opening up and sharing in really some deep moments at times.
Wow. What I heard, Sheila, is a powerful woman was able to show some of her vulnerability, communicate with husband on where that come from and where you are at. So I think that's very, very helpful. And I hope that you continue to enjoy that feeling of someone is taking care of you. I would enjoy that.
I'm definitely getting used to it, because I don't, we don't split dinners, if you will. From that standpoint.
Okay.
Having said that, I will, admit that, part of that limiting belief, and even though my husband and I have been together almost 11 years, married for almost 5, that I do, maintain a separate, bank account, and realistically, so does he. He's been married and divorced. So, I respect and understand that there's, wanting some of that comfort with that. So yeah, when I say I'm willing to let him pay for dinners, that's kind of our joke, because obviously we have our joint accounts as well. So
Sheila, I feel that you need to study some marital laws. Okay, go ahead, Joy.
I don't really have questions for you, Sheila. I think that's an awesome story that you're willing to share with our audience. It takes a lot of courage to actually be vulnerable on such topics. And I'm thinking, for our listeners' benefit, as you have learned through the journey, now you understand that's a limiting belief. You got it as you grow up, and now you figure out how to actually open up on the communication. What would you like to, recommend for our listeners to do if you ever realize the similar situation?
well, I think for me, and perhaps for all 3 of us as coaches, that in learning about limiting beliefs and being coached and coaching others, it's really, to your point, Joy and Hope, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's to recognize what's going on, where that is coming from, and talk through it. And just a plug for all coaches out there. I think as coaches, we are well prepared to coach individuals through that. And, even for me, it's not a one and done. Hey, I realize I have this limiting belief. Boom, I'm coached. It's over. There's a tendency for it to show up. And, with this awareness, I can talk about it, talk through it with my coach, and, once again, be vulnerable and share with my husband. And even as a parent, recognize, as I'm communicating with my own children, what limiting beliefs I may have created for them, and call it out to them. Like, hey, I created that you don't have to own that, right? Let's talk through that kind of thing.
That's an awesome point. Us as children and also us as parents. Thank you for sharing, Sheila.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll turn it back to you, Hope.
Yeah, I just want to mention that, Sheila, even though you said it's your limiting belief, and I didn't know that probably is also one of mine. Growing up as a very independent, competitive girl, I think I struggled to ask for help from other people in general, not only the person that I married with, but in general. I feel that being strong seems to be like, that's what I'm looking for. But throughout life experiences, I started to learn that asking for help is actually a strength, not a weakness. And I think me kind of at a similar journey with you, but I have no problem for my husband taking care of me. So, but just
Good
in
for you.
terms of showing the vulnerability of, hey, even if sometimes I ask my kids saying, hey, today I'm not feeling well, can you do this for me? So even showing that, I feel that I am getting so much better. Joy, do you have any similar experience, or you're in a different territory?
I think on this topic, not so much similar experiences. I will save it for another day.
Okay, all
Well,
right.
I would like to add to what you said, and that's another way that shows up, right? It's asking for what you want, and that too, whether it's from a personal or career standpoint, it's, oh, I got to figure out, I got to do it myself, kind of thing. So that's I think you're spot on. That's a lesson learned too. It's, you know, it's okay to ask for help, and it truly is a strength to do that from that standpoint. So thank you for sharing that.
So maybe we can talk about that in the future, asking for help.
Absolutely. Ask for what
Okay,
you want.
awesome. Thank you so much, Shayla and Joy, especially Shayla, share your limiting belief, show your vulnerability. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for listening to Y.E.A.S.T, your energetic, authentic self today. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.